They are names that ring out the Einstein, Cleopatra, Joan of Arc, Gandhi, but most of all, the name that rings most true in the hearts of men. You already know. Who else would it be but Lucina? Oh, truly a name worthy of the gods. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. For 1 hour. Let's cue the music. I'm gonna go insane if I don't have like Conquest playing in the background. Anyways, this is the quality content you've subscribed for. I don't know what video you were expecting, but now I can make whatever video I want on this channel. You know I had to do it. First video coming back, you know I had to do it. I got the timer. Well, on my end, I can see when it's going to hit an hour. We're 1 minute in. I just got to do that 60 times, and I'm good. And it'll be easy anyways. You think I can't talk about Lucina for 1 hour? For 1 hour? I can talk about Lucina for 50 hours. 60. 24-hour stream. Only talking about Lucina. But anyways, the prompt for this was... on my channel, I got, while I was streaming, I got asked, why Lucina? Or I forget where I was asked, but why Lucina? Why this crazy obsession with this one character, just out of all the Fire Emblem characters? And the question had a tone of like, why Lucina? As in, holy crap, your taste is horrible. Or like, why Lucina? Why out of everybody, why Lucina? She's like not that great at all. And you know what? They're getting more than they bargained for here. I don't know who it was. It might have been Dodo. I think it was Dodo. Correct me if I'm wrong if you subscribed and that's what you asked me, why Lucina? Well, you're about to get a thesis, a dissertation on Lucina right now. This is the quality you subscribed for. Just to show, you know, I mean, look at what I'm wearing right now. Bet y'all thought I'd even have this shirt. This is from like, I don't know how long ago. I got this a while ago. I don't know when. It was a while ago, but got the Lucy shirt. Got the amiibo. Got the Figma. And I guess today I'm here to answer that why Lucina question. Because out of all the lords, Lucina gets not the most cred, and I get it. I actually totally get why for the most part. But I guess I'm going to explain over the course of the next hour, like why I like Lucina, how I got to like Lucina, why I still think the character is pretty good, and I think Lucina's design is actually one of the best in the entire series in terms of how iconic it is. How recognizable it is, and just the moments where maybe Lucina does fall short, and I understand why people do not enjoy the character. So strap in, boys. Strap in. Y'all about to get schooled. So I guess it starts with when I played Awakening for the first time. You know, this was in 2013, February of 2013. Actually, let me look at the release date, because for me, it might have technically been January when I was already playing the game. Because if you all have seen my video, Odd Rhythm, you'll have known that, you know, I got an early copy of the game. Oh, sorry about the mic. Because my local EB Games broke the street date. So, of course, it released April 20th in Japan, or April 19th. February 4th. So I think I got it February 1st then, because I played it over the weekend before it launched. Yeah, over the weekend before it launched, that's what I was playing. And I was playing Awakening, and I totally legit thought Marth was a guy the first time around. I had my suspicions, like, it was kind of weird, because a lot of anime and cartoons like Pokemon, like all the guys are voiced by like, or all the young men are voiced by women a lot of the time. In these dubs, and even in the original Japanese versions, just a lot of young women play young men or voice young men. And I thought that was just another case of this, where it was just the same thing, where I was legitimately fooled the first time around. I'm like, is that actually Marth? Like, because you gotta understand, I'd only had Smash Brothers before, so I legit thought it was actually Marth, like the whole time. No lie, that's totally legit. I thought that was Marth. Like, wow, Marth's in this game? He looks pretty cool. Like, I had thoughts along those lines. Of course, I was playing the game like hours at a time, so I forget what chapter it is that Lucina's identity, or not Marth, where Marth's identity is revealed, isn't until much later in the game. I think that was on my second day of playing, because I played it Friday. I think I played it Friday afternoon, Saturday all day, Sunday all day, and I beat it Sunday night of that weekend. And it must have been Friday, because I believe it is in chapter 6, where it's like they're in the castle and the assassinations plot, and the mask is knocked off, and I was like, what? That's insane! That's insanity! I legitimately had no clue. I had like an inkling in the back of my mind, like, could be a girl, but it looks like a guy, and I think like Japanese voices and American voices often have young women voicing up men. But so when that reveal happened, I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm feeling it now. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool, because I think this was the beginning of my. I have a thing for just anime girls with swords. I don't know what it is. You got Lucina, like my second favorite female character that is like in the style is Saber. So this might have been the start here. But then the backstory that came along with Lucina, I think once it was really revealed what was going on with Lucina, I was like, whoa, okay, this is interesting, because of course this is back when I was 13, I believe. Yeah, this would be when I was 13. And again, I had never played a teen game or anything with a story like this kind of intense. The most intense thing I'd probably seen was like Star Wars, maybe. And that's a maybe, because Star Wars had that scene where like Luke's uncle and like the aunt, like they get turned into spooky skeletons. And that, when I was a kid, that had me shook. Like I couldn't even look at the screen. Like that was probably the most intense thing I dealt with up to that point in terms of like story. Probably was Star Wars. I had a weak stomach when it came to violence, and I wasn't used to stories that like this complicated, especially time travel stories. Like I was like, whoa, is that my 13-year-old brain was just exploding. Like couldn't handle this. It was like, holy crap, what is going on? This is so cool. In fact, I remember ranting to like anybody around me. I'm like, holy crap, the story, man. The story, it's insane. It's like nothing you've ever seen. I was just blown away. With like when everything was revealed about Lucina in the story. And I believe I used Lucina. I didn't, in terms of the first S support I did with my unit, it wasn't actually Lucina. I think it was Seiri. It was actually Seiri first, the first character that I S supported in that game with my unit. And it wasn't until later, because it wasn't until after I beat the game and I started playing like the child paralogs and unlocking all of Lucina's supports, that I really just found the character extremely appealing. Again, 13-year-old brain here. I still think Lucina is actually legitimately a good character, but this is like 13-year-old me thought Lucina was the greatest character to ever exist, which I do not believe anymore. But like in my 13-year-old head, I was like, holy crap, like this is so cool. Like Lucina's whole kind of shtick of just being really, it's a trope. It's definitely a trope that's like done to death But this was my first time encountering this trope, so I wasn't used to it. Same thing with Severa, because I kind of had a thing for Severa for a while because of the tsundere thing. And first encounter with so many Japanese tropes was Fire Emblem Awakening for me. So that whole like silent, like kind of regal, like woman swordsman thing, like that was something I hadn't run into before, and I guess I really fell for the archetype hard. Because that outward confidence, that outward, you know, like kind of like ability, that confidence, that ability, and to just carry yourself like with that much like pressure on your shoulders and that much like on like burdening you, and you're still standing up and getting stuff done. That kind of strong character, I guess, really appealed to me. But then also, because with like all these like kind of Japanese tropes, it's kind of like not a yin-yang deal, but like they have the main character trait and then their sub-traits are exactly the opposite of their main trait. So like Lucina's very confident in like battle, and that's all she really knows, but like outside of that she's really awkward and kind of sweet, which I find this is hilarious to talk about, especially on camera. But that like that sweet kind of other side, where when not put in these contexts where it's violence and like life is easier and things are more relaxed, like Lucina, the way she thinks of other people is just really endearing, and that she almost always has the best intentions. She's just in this environment, she's not as skilled at those kinds of things. And that just really, that appeals to me like so much. I don't even know why, because like when people ask like, oh, why do you like that? Sometimes it's like you don't even know why you like it. You just do. It just appeals to you, and sometimes you just don't know why. And I guess 13-year-old me, I can't think of a reason why that appealed to me, in particularly at that time. Maybe it was a phase I was in. I don't know. I legitimately don't know why that, out of all the characters in Awakening, Lucina is the one that popped out at me. But obviously, I wasn't alone, because it seems like Lucina's popularity is absolutely insane. And it might be because of like 13-year-olds like me experiencing that for the first time. And it just resonated with me, the character. And this was also, okay, we're getting hella weird here. We're about to get into some weird territory. This was the first time I'd ever felt so strongly about a fictional character. Like, no other fictional character up to this point had resonated with me on that level as Lucina did. Or, like I didn't like a character as much as I had liked Lucina before, to the point where the gulf between like liking Lucina and the next character I liked after that was huge. And it just brought out some emotions that I didn't know how to deal with as a 13-year-old. Like, as a 13-year-old, again, I wasn't the most outward, or like, I was kind of slightly sheltered, not necessarily like, kind of by my own will too. I sheltered myself, and my parents also somewhat sheltered me from, like, again, more violent media. Like, they wouldn't let us buy violent video games for a very long time. Smash Brothers was a hard sell on them. But, I mean, slowly over time, they've kind of, like, they don't do that anymore. But at the time, that amount of sheltering, I had a lot of feelings that I didn't know, like, what they even were. Sorry, I gotta sneeze now. Oh, God. You know, when you're talking for an hour, it's kind of weird because you're just bound to... Wow, that sucks. Ugh. But yeah, it's like, it threw me for a loop in terms of my mind. I'm like, what is going on in my head? Like, what is happening? And it resulted in a very weird phase of my life. A very weird kind of phase that I went through. I'm not sure how many people have had this phase, but it is definitely the unironic like use of the term waifu, because that happened for a while for me. Unironically using that word to describe like my feelings towards Lucina. Again, this is super awkward to talk about on camera, but you know, who hasn't been 13 and who hasn't had like some kind of awkward thing like that they've like had. And I guess this was my adolescence. My weird thing from like 13 to around 14, 15 was I was pretty much not a full out like total weeaboo, but I was on the fringe. You know, the learning Japanese phase, the using waifu unironically phase, the like all I could talk about was anime phase. Like that was that period of time. Like I could only talk about anime or video games. I had a learning Japanese phase, and I had using the term waifu phase. And it all kind of stemmed from like Lucina, so it's kind of weird because I don't feel that way at all anymore. Anytime I use the word waifu, is almost purely ironic, or as like a joke, or as like I don't know how many people use the term unironically anymore. I'm sure some people do. I'm sure that's still a thing. But there's that residual kind of like effect. Like I never like went on the reverse. I'm like, oh man, I hate Lucina now. Lucina, like, ugh. I never flipped. It kind of just like slowly over time, I just, with more experience, I came to realize like, all right, this is a fictional character. And slowly over time, my kind of obsession just waned as I like mellowed out and went through high school and kind of got that like feel for what is socially acceptable and what is socially not acceptable. And I slowly feeled it out. I'm like, okay, clearly this was the first time I had to dealt with these kinds of emotions toward a character or any type of like person, actually, in terms of like how it made me feel. So I had to go through a period where I was like, okay, how do I deal with these emotions? How do I cope with them? And how do I make sure like I'm staying or thinking correctly or healthily about this kind of because I'm just gonna outright say it. At the time, I literally thought in my head, I am in love with this character. That's, again, cut me some slack, guys. I was 13. I was a tween, okay? But I didn't have another way to describe it. But over time, I just kind of mellowed out a bit on it. But that residual effect where I was like, this character kind of represents that point of my life and that like aspect of that, or that period of time to me. Like Lucina for me is symbolic of awakening, is symbolic of that awkward, really awkward phase of my life where I was like socially just totally out of tune with the rest of the world. And it's not like I hated, or it's not like I don't like resenting like periods of my life, but Lucina's come to represent that, and kind of the more lighter, funny side of it, where it's like, she's my waifu, and that's hilarious. Like, just kind of not self-deprecating, but, you know, not taking it so seriously. Just keeping it lightly, like, oh, it's a fictional character that I like, and that's it. And I can have fun with that. And I don't have to be so serious about it. And I don't have to feel so seriously about it because it's a fictional character. And again, Lucina came to like represent in my head that like process, in terms of the initial feeling, a phase, and then slowly getting out of the phase or growing out of that phase. But Lucina still represents like that whole process and that whole period of my life. And that's why I kind of, in terms of an out of game context, instead of like out of the context of just the game and Lucina as a character, out of that context, if you pull it out, I just have this kind of nostalgic, sentimental attachment to the character and what it represents to me in my personal life. I mean, most of the stuff I have, like, I don't know, when does Smash 4 come out? Well, I got this around when Smash 4 came out. I got a bunch of prints at, like, expos and stuff of Lucina around the time. This Figma, I don't know when this Figma released, but get a look at that. If it focuses on it. Come on, focus. Still not focusing. God damn. Focus? There we go. Yeah, this Figma's great. It's a great Figma. Kinda got like the one of the default poses. It's a really cool Figma. But yeah, that I kinda just accumulated all this Lucina stuff over that time. That I just have, and I don't like. Maybe I should get rid of it, but I totally don't want to, because it's like I just look at it. I'm like, wow, now I remember all of my memories, like of Awakening. I remember that phase of my life, and I get nostalgic for it, kind of. Not nostalgic necessarily in the like, oh, I wish I was back in those days, back when I used waifu unironically. It's not that. It's not like a yearning to go back. It's more like a reminiscing, about like just happy times, because although I cringe now at like what I was doing when I was 13, 15, in the moment I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I was so happy, and it brings those emotions, you know, back of those kind of times. So that's why the character kind of resonates with me in an out of game context, and why the character means a lot to me, like out of game, and why I still Lucina's probably my favorite Fire Emblem character still, because Awakening is probably my favorite game in the series. Again, there's a huge difference between favorite and what I think is the best. People always seem to think that those two are the same thing, and they're not. I don't think Fire Emblem Awakening is the best Fire Emblem game, but it is my personal favorite, for a lot of personal reasons. And Lucina is a representation of that. And so that's why Lucina is my favorite character. Now let's talk more about in-game stuff, because Lucina, oh man, Lucina, because Lucina is such this big, like, kind of figure in the game, and became kind of the icon, or like the de facto symbol of Awakening. But like, because she is that, she's also the target of some of the most criticism out of the entire, out of the entire like Fire Emblem cast, or out of the cast of Awakening. But I feel it's actually pretty balanced. Like, there's a huge amount of people who really like Lucina, and there's a huge amount of people who really don't like Lucina, and I feel it kind of balances out fairly well, to where it never feels like one-sided. And of course, you've got the joke or the meme arguments, like, oh, flat in terms of character, and in terms of, you know, physical appearance, which I think, well, come on, guys. I know they're jokes. I know they're memes. And boring. Flat, boring, uninteresting, plain, vanilla. And I get it. I get why people don't find this particular, you know, trope or character type interesting. Because that's what it is. Essentially, that's what Lucina is. Lucina is a type of this, like, this trope, this elegant woman, confident swordsman type that's awkward outside of the battlefield. Like, that's just a thing. Like, again, another one of my favorite characters, Saber from Fate Stay Night. Super similar to Lucina. Like, serious on the battlefield, fighting for, like, ideals, and, like, very, like, a born leader. But take them out of that context, and then all of a sudden the facade is kind of gone, and they're awkward, and they're not in tune with social norms, because they're so wrapped up in that, like, battle and grander ideals thing. Like, Lucina, Saber, there's more. It's because it is a trope. And again, that's why I understand why people are like, oh, that's kind of boring. Like that's so uninteresting. It's just a trope. It's boring. Um, but personally, I find the trope. I love the trope. It's probably one of my favorite tropes in anime, or in like Japanese like storytelling in terms of video games, anime, manga. It is one of my favorite like kind of archetypes. And in the case of Lucina's, I think Lucina's motivations and her supports, I think they're quite good. I think they're. I actually really enjoy them a lot. Like we talk about the backstory. I guess let's start with the backstory. The parents died, ruined future, like fighting with the remnants of humanity against Grima, and then coming back to like when her parents were alive to fix that future. I love that setup. That premise, I absolutely love it. Um, it doesn't have to be wholly original to be like interesting or engaging. And for some reason that whole like that's the most interesting or second most interesting part of Awakening's plot to me is that, you know, that future segment. That like what was the future like? I'd love actually to see I would have loved to see some chapters in the future. Like with Lucina and the kids in the future. I would have loved some chapters of that. Like maybe that was the prologue. I mean, actually, you know what? No, that probably wouldn't have worked. Or maybe some like second playthrough, you unlock some new chapters where it's like Lucina and the kids like in the future. That setting, especially the cutscenes in that setting, where it's like the Lucina cutscenes where she's like fighting and then like Grima shows up and then it's like ah! I don't know how Lucina lived that actually. Like, did Lucina actually live that battle? Like, or how did she live it? I legitimately don't know. I think that should be really cool to actually know. Like, but we didn't see it, and it's kind of like just skipped over. Like, oh, they came back. They made it back. But regardless, like that part of the plot is really interesting to me, and Lucina's like role as the leader of this resistance in this kind of like almost post-apocalyptic setting after this kind of like golden age of wars, fought by Crom, like great victories over Plesia, great victories over Vom, and then this kind of apocalyptic like all the heroes are dead or all the heroes die kind of deal, and Lucina leading this resistance and then coming back to like fix it, and what Lucina is leaving behind and not knowing like if she'll ever get back to those futures. She's essentially abandoning that timeline. And when you abandon, I guess I don't know how Fire Emblem's time rules work or time and space rules work, but that whole abandoning her time just like for another future that isn't her own, because Lucina at the end of the game like vanishes in most of her endings. In terms of the post-credit scene, oh, she vanishes, never seen again, leaves, doesn't come back. She essentially, it's almost like a self-sacrifice of her world, or the world she knew, and all the relationships she grew over that time. Although the kids come back, but she's basically abandoning that world to its fate for another world to potentially be saved from that fate. And I find that very interesting as a concept. And in the same vein, like I was just saying, the whole leaving afterwards to like not like Lucina's view on herself as a kind of not as a part of this world, like Lucina feels like she doesn't necessarily belong in the world because she's from literally a different world. She's a piece that's not supposed to be there. That's not supposed to be anywhere near there. And her perspective on, like, I don't have a role to play in this world. Like, there's no place for me here. Like, this isn't my world. I'm coming to save this world, but this is not my world. This is not my place to be in the role I once was. That is, like, the Lucina in this timeline's role, and I would never want to take that away. That approach and thinking just... Lucina becomes almost like a tragic figure. Not in the sense that, oh, Lucina dies, but more in the sense that Lucina has to forsake her post, her position, her status, her relationships with like her parents that she like renewed, that she got back. Because imagine, like, she comes back, meets her parents again, reforges those bonds, and then has to lose them again, but has to leave them of her own will after they were reforged. That kind of tragic story, it really resonated with me in terms of the leaving part, of having to lose them again. Especially, like, a lot of her quotes are like, bonds give me strength, like, friendships, like, those are what give me, like, that get me through the day, those are what, like, why I can still fight. And then when she has to leave them at the end of the game, in most endings, or I believe in almost all endings, like, she just straight up leaves or disappears. I find that very appealing. I find that a very interesting story arc, or a very interesting arc to discover. And that's another point I also want to bring up, is that Lucina's personality is very much a result of who she was in her environment. And as a result, she's gone through most of her character development through most of, like, already. And that's another thing why I'd love to see that aspect of the story. I'd love to see Lucina start off, like, more jovial, or more looser, or more, like, kind of, like, not the person she is. Like, I'd love to see that arc in the future where Lucina goes from this jovial, spirited leader. I mean, she is kind of that. But I'd love to see the pressure of the situation she's in slowly harden her into the character we see in the game, because we never see that. We never get a glimpse of that. The only glimpse we do get of that is her when she's not in battle, and she's a little more childish, a little more looser, a little more loosey-goosey. And I would have loved to see, like, I'd love to see where that comes from, and see it not necessarily get, get pressured out of her, or get pressured out of her on the battlefield, or see Lucina become that in real time. In fact, a lot of my inspiration for this video was, I believe it was Soma's Corner. He did an 1 and 8-minute analysis of Lucina and her supports, and it's great. In terms of the content, I mean, visually, of course, I'm the guy that's stuck on visuals, and it was not a very pretty video. And I mean, Soma, even in the comments, acknowledges that, and I get it. It was still very enlightening, and it got me excited to talk about this again, or talk about Lucina again, because a lot of the points he brought up, again, really resonated with me. Really, like, they've really got me thinking about this again, and I really enjoyed watching it. And he brought up this point, like, particularly where, yeah, Lucina's already kind of been pressured or developed. And as a result, in the story, we don't see much more development until the end, where, of course, we have the very controversial, scene where Lucina ends up trying to kill Robin. And that scene, very divisive among a lot of people, but when I first encountered that in the story, I was like, what is going on? Holy crap, this is the greatest game I've ever played. I love this. Of course, most people don't like how Chrom just, like, stab, 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 no matter what you choose, or whether you accept it or not. And I've already talked about those kinds of choices before. I think the Lucina one was less powerful than the Embryn one, to be honest. But that scene is one of my favorites, especially when Lucina has a familial relation to the Avatar in some way, whether that's mother, whether that's husband, in the story. It's actually one of my favorite moments in the game, because if it wasn't for the Chrom shenanigans, because I wish that Lucina either actually went through with it, or Chrom just didn't interfere and Lucina lost. I would have rather that, to be honest. In fact, the whole player choice things, dialogue choices, I think shouldn't have been in the game at all. Like in my video, I talk about similar things. I'm like, oh, this is what they were going for, but it didn't really reach that. And, like, here's why it didn't reach that level. But here's what they were going for. And ultimately, it didn't land, in my opinion. In every single instance where they offer player choice and dialogue, it does not work. But in this particular moment, like, I feel that kind of ruined it, but I still really loved the setup of the scene. I loved how I think it makes total sense. Like, as Lucina, you're like, this is the person who's going to ruin the future. They need to die. Like, that rational thinking, I totally get. I totally understand. And when Lucina, like, because basically you can accept or refuse, and then if you accept, Lucina, like, can't do it, if I recall correctly, and if you refuse, then, like, Chrom comes in, like, I need to probably remember the scene better or go over it more closely, but I remember the first playthrough, that moment really stuck with me. But then after that, Lucina just gets abandoned by the plot. She gets totally sidelined. I was like, no! Like, that was such an interesting moment that never really gets followed up on in the story. Like, it never really gets properly, like, concluded as an arc. Or it never comes to a proper resolution where Lucina's reflecting, like, on what she's done in a retrospective way. Like, in the moment, Lucina's like, oh, I'm so sorry, like... But I would have loved to see a retrospective from Lucina later in the game on that plot point. And maybe even see it come back into play and maybe an action Lucina has to take in the plot. But I hated how they kind of ditched Lucina at that point, and it doesn't do Lucina any favors in terms of criticism that people have of the character. Oof. Alright, I need to take a little breather here. I also need to check, because I had to turn the camera off and on. I need to see how long we're at here. How long have we been going for in terms of talking about Lucy? Because there's still more to get through. YouTube. Just going through some folders here. Gotta find it. Where are you? Are you, little bugger? Where are you? 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 Gonna have to go to my settings and see where the output was. There you go. That's where they are. How long was I going on about that? Does it give me the details, the length? Oh, half an hour. So we still got another 25 minutes to go. Okay. So yeah, criticisms of Lucina. The boring, bland, uninteresting, and she's obviously, she's not important enough to get a game over when she dies. I actually agree with that point a lot. I wish Lucina played a bigger role in the story. And, because I think Lucina, if properly fleshed out, it can become probably one of the most compelling characters in the entire cast. But Lucina never really gets that full attention in the second half of the story once she's revealed as Lucina. Lucina never really gets that attention, and as a result is kind of inconsequential to what's left of the plot. And the moment she is consequential to it, it doesn't even matter, like, what she does, which really just sucks. And I totally understand why, wow, that's lame. Like, I agree, that is lame, and it doesn't help her character at all in terms of helping it shine through. And I don't think it's good writing either. And, like, I totally see that perspective where, like, well, if you get a game over, like, or if Lucina dies, there's no game over. Like, she's like a pseudo third lord in the story, where it's Robin and Chrom. And the story really is about Robin, and it's about Chrom. And then Lucina's kind of there, and like a third lord for a lot of it. But then as soon as she joins the party, she just takes a backseat, and then she has to stay alive for some story points, but she's not important enough where if she dies, she get a game over. She's in this kind of limbo. In this lord limbo. And it's not good for her character in terms of letting the character flesh out and letting the character shine in the context of the plot. I think really they should have either tried to just commit either or. Just like, she's either a lord and she's important enough to the story to get a game over, or she's not important enough to the story, so where she's never in that role in the first place, Like, she's just in this weird zone, which I don't like. And I wish they just expanded on the character further. I think, of course, some people think Lucina at her core is just not an interesting character. And, or that she's overdone, or the trope's overdone. And I honestly, I still disagree on that point. I think Lucina is actually, if you go through some supports, still is quite an interesting character to look into her psyche and how she thinks about things. Especially, what is it? This was also in Soma's Corner, the Jerome support, where she kind of compares herself to a lone wolf. Before Jerome's like, "What are you talking about? Are you stupid? You're not a lone wolf. Like, you lead. You are the leader of the wolves in a sense. Like, I'm truly like." They were kind of like trying to compare how alone they were, and then Lucina's like, "Oh man, I'm so alone." And then Jerome's like, "What are you talking about?" But the fact that Lucina saw herself as this solitary like burden like weighed person, and had to kind of have that like knocked out of her by Jerome, I find that very compelling. I guess I keep returning to the whole leaving thing, the whole coming back to save a world that you basically abandoning your world to come save a world which you too will have to abandon once more if you're successful, or lose again. Like, it's a lose-lose for Lucina in terms of her like connections with her parents and her friends. I guess not the other children. The other children, she still gets those bonds. But this whole like having your role in a world that you had taken away, it's just it's compelling to me. It is very compelling. I guess I'll also talk about Lucina's design, because holy crap, Kozaki. I actually am pretty critical of Kozaki, but I think Lucina's design, holy crap. There is a reason that people like Lucina as much as they do, in terms of her, and I think her appearance basically plays into that, is what I'm trying to say. I think the butterfly motif, super cool. I love that motif, the whole butterfly effect, time traveling and stuff. I think that's a really cool homage to that like concept, and to put it on the time traveling character is also fun. I think the whole like, well, most JRPGs have this thing for belts, you know, everybody's got a belt everywhere. I mean, Lucina's it kind of makes a little more sense, but the whole like kind of aesthetic that Lucina has going on, I find it hilarious. That's kind of contradictory, or contradictory to her character trait, where she's totally not stylish at all, or has no sense of style. But then she has probably one of the best outfits in the entire like army, in terms of like the appearance, in terms of like design, which makes no sense to me. Like, you can't tell me like she chose those boots. Like, you can never convince me that. Which it's just hilarious. It's actually really funny. Like, this whole aesthetic style going on, but basically it's not synchronatic necessarily with that character trait, in particularly the poor fashion sense. But I don't necessarily consider the poor fashion sense like an essential part of her character. It's more like the awkwardness part is more like what that character trait is about. But I can totally see why people are like, "What the hell? That makes no sense." I'm like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I can concede that point. I mean, you've also got, I wish I had a better picture up here, but this is a really cool pose actually too. This is actually a great pose in terms of if you're thinking of silhouetting, and if you silhouetted it, it's really iconic. And that's another thing. Lucina's design is extremely iconic. And the thing is that there's a reason for it. I think that like there's a reason why Lucina's design just pops out so much more than some of the rest than the rest of the cast, especially Chrom. I find Chrom's design in terms of like pop, like Lucina's feels so much more synchronized and just cohesive and fully realized than Chrom's. And of course, I'm not an artist, okay? I'm a game designer, so that means I'm more thinking in terms of mechanics, and I'm thinking in terms of gameplay, and and tuning. I'm thinking more in those terms than I am in character design. Although character design is very important when you're making a game, because you have to have a character that, you know, fits like your design goals. And I think Lucina's design just, I'll say it again, it's iconic, it's memorable. I mean, there's a, like, I don't know what else to say. That's the thing. Maybe I'm not the best person to talk about design. I'm sure maybe there's even some artists or designers who don't like Lucina's design. And I'd love to actually hear their reasons why, if that's the case. I'd love to see more character design analysis from a visual perspective, rather than, you know, like, oh, I like this character, they look pretty. Because that's essentially what I'm saying. I'm saying Lucina's design looks pretty, looks clean, and it's visually distinct and interesting. Especially with the butterfly motifs. So yeah, especially with the you know what I'm trying to get at. And good lord, sometimes you just gotta give in to the fan service. And for a while, I never understood fan service. I never got it. I never understood. I'm like, wow, that's so dumb. That's so stupid. And Awakening does have some stupid stuff that I still don't think like is good in terms of like fan service. I think some of the arbor designs are a little you know, Kozaki, he made some questionable choices on his designs, and they really shine through at points. And I totally get that. That's the type of stuff I'm kind of not down for. But the type of fan service where it's just for like Lucina fans, and they just, you know, sometimes, okay, real talk here. Real talk. Sometimes you just want to see your favorite character in a, wow, I don't even know the name of it now. But whatever the art is on the right there. A Yukuda, I believe it is called. Sometimes you just want to see that. That's all you need. Sometimes that would make you the happiest person in the world. And guess what? When that Hot Springs DLC came out, I was the happiest person in the world. So thank you, Kozaki, for unleashing that upon the world, because it made a lot of people very happy, including myself. Also, that new Cypher card. Any Cypher cards, actually, of Lucina are, holy crap, they're so good. But I'm talking about that. Cypher fans, you know what I'm talking about. That new swimsuit one is absolutely insane. It's stupid. It's so dumb. But sometimes, you know, fan service. I didn't get it until I didn't get it until Lucina, to be honest. And I was like, oh, this is why this is so popular. That's why people like it. And oh my god, did I just break my mask? I was fiddling with it in my hands. That's still okay. But I guess that's kind of like, that's the thing. That's where I feel kind of weird, because I'm like, this is like, a lot of the fan service like complaints have kind of toned down over the years, and not in terms of like you know, pointless, like I mean a lot of the Lucina stuff could be considered pointless and pandering, disgusting, and like, but you know what? I feel like a lot of the opinions on that have toned down, because people are just like, man, I just want to see what I like, and that's what I like. And a lot of those complaints have kind of slowly come down. Although in some cases they've gone. In fact, some people are mad that there's not fan service anymore. Like with the Japanese, like with the localization changes between games, like people get angry now that there's not that fan service there, which is, I think, it's kind of like, back when I was younger, like the internet opinion was like, oh man, fan service is so disgusting and it's the worst and gross. And some people, of course, still hold that opinion. But it's kind of shifted to the other way, where people are like, I want to see this work in its original form, and if that is fan service, I don't care. I want to see it in that original form. I don't want to have an altered version. And it's kind of flipped around. But I guess Lucina was my first time I really got it, where I'm like, oh, so I don't get this, and I want it. And it is interesting to think about, because like how that changes your opinion on things, or how Lucina changed my perspective on that. Of course, you can say whatever you want about me, to be honest, in terms of like my opinion on fan service and stuff. But Lucina was the first time I got it, and I think that's interesting, and it's kind of hard to explain those kind of like emotions, but it's like I feel like the stuff that Lucina's got is totally like within reason. Like the yukata thing, I guess no. I guess the swimsuit isn't within reason, but then it kind of just then it comes to this thing where it's like, yeah, I don't think Lucina. Actually, wait a minute. I don't know. That swimsuit she's wearing in the Cypher like stuff is so crazy and over the top and ridiculous that maybe Lucina would choose. I don't know. All I know is that that is one of the most crazy, like one of the greatest pieces of art ever created on the history of man. And that's all I'm saying. Anyways, what have we gone over? We still got 10 more minutes to kill before we reach the hour point. I guess we could talk about as a unit. Gameplay? What's that? I never heard of gameplay. What's that? Lucina, I always use Lucina now, because Lucina, almost all the kids will always have access to Gale Force, but I always ran Great Lord Lucina because I just thought that was, I think Great Lord Lucina looks hella cool. I think that butterfly shield, totally not practical, looks cool as hell. I love the butterfly shield. That, mwah. So I kind of, that's how I treat Fire Emblem a lot of the time. I'm not a very tactical or like super like min-maxing player. I'm more, because the game allows me to play how I like to play, and I can still win, I just opt to choose to play how I like to play regardless of whether it's good or not, because it's still most of the time possible in the game until you get to higher difficulties. But if I'm on hard classic, in most of the modern games, you can play however you like and still win, and like still be able to beat the game, which is what I like. In fact, you could argue you can do that at a high level as well, depending on how good you are. Like, there's different ways to go about beating the levels with different characters and low turn counts and LTCs. There's different ways to go about it. But I always used Great Lord Lucina or Paladin Lucina, just because that movement is really, it's really helpful. And I always use, and of course I always paired up Lucina with my avatar after the first playthrough. Except I had a female Robin playthrough where I don't think I did. Well, I couldn't, so I didn't. And yeah, that's what I usually did. I usually ran Rifle King, Aether, Limit Breaker, because I used Limit Breaker for Apotheosis and that stuff, and Lucina was definitely important in those runs. I used Limit Breaker, Rifle King, Aether. That was the main one, because that just makes Aether proc like ridiculously high. Maybe, and then if I think on my Paladin one I had Pavise and Aegis, both. I think I had Pavise, Aegis. Oh no, Gale Force. That's what I had. Gale Force. I had Gale Force, Limit Breaker, Rifle King, Aether, and then I think I had Pavise, because I think I was doing mainly melee stuff. I think I was using Pavise on my Lucina most of the time. But I think no matter if I was using Great Lord or Paladin, that was always my Lucy build. And I almost always did Sumiya as the father. Sumiya as the father. Nobody quote me on that ever, please. Please nobody clip that. Please nobody post that. Lucina as the mother. Crom father. Lucina as daughter with Sumiya as the mother. I was about to say Lucina as the mother, and I would have actually just shut this off and never published it ever if I said that. But that's usually what I ran, and then I just paired up with my avatar. Because avatar usually never doesn't have Gale Force, so what I would just do like Lucy attack, Gale Force, then use my avatar's attack. I think that's what I did most of the time. Or that's what I ran with. And I think Lucina, of course, I am not an expert on Awakening in terms of actual like tiers and like who's the best unit? Who's bad? Who's the best gross? Who's got the best bases? I'm not the guy to ask. But I found Lucina always super helpful. Especially, what I did usually is when I got Lucina in my party, I didn't do this on my stream playthrough of Awakening. But what I did is that, okay, I'd train Lucy up to like a certain level without using a promotion, and then I'd promote her, and then Lucina would already be my best unit on my team. By the time I promoted to Great Lord, because the bases I think are crazy. When the kids first appeared, if your parents are crazy, then your bases are crazy, and then your growths are crazy. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, to be honest. But Lucina always happened to me my best once I trained her up, because the kids are just way better than the parents. So, and since Lucina is the first kid you get, Lucina was the first, like, immediately dominated, like, my playthrough right away. Or Lucina is one of the first kids you can get. Also, I guess we've got about 7-8 minutes left. I feel like I'm stretching. I'm running out of gas here. Those of you who might remember on 420 last year, I did that Lucina countdown stream, and that was hilarious. In fact, let me get up the rap again. I still have it, the Lucina rap. Oh man, it's beautiful. It's actually one of the greatest things ever written. I don't know where it would be though. I've got to find it, but I might finish off with that again. Because that's hilarious. That is so funny. I think it's just dumb rap. I think it's just called dumb rap. Although I have other raps that are written and oh my gosh, why is my internet not working? No internet. What is going on here? Because man, that's something y'all don't want to miss. Something y'all would never want to miss. Oh, I could show my Lucina prints. I've got more Lucina stuff. Like, that's not it. It's not just the amiibo and the Figma and like the crappy mask I have. It's not just that. I've got even more stuff. So, I guess we'll wait for the internet to finish up here, and then I'll go, why is it not, like, come on. Why is it not connecting? That is so weird. Like, out of nowhere, all of a sudden, I have no internet access? That's weird. I guess while I wait, I'll just get my prints real fast. Give me a sec. Here we go. Oh, man. I think I've got 4 Lucinas here. In terms of prints. And also, did I drop some frames there or not drop some frames? I was lagging out a bit there. Alright. So, first up, this is my oldest one. It's got the most wear and tear. We've got this print here. Come on. This was the first Lucina print I got. I got this at Fan Expo in 2013. It's seen some wear and tear. You can see there it's like not perfectly straight. Like if I just go there, it's been bent. It's been around. It's been framed. It was framed in my room for about like 2-3 years. And it's definitely my oldest one. And it's kind of the one I like the most still to this day. I still really love this one. If I could ever like get a Laura Bailey sig on this, like I'd get a Laura Bailey to sign this one for sure. Also, what's going on with the internet? Yeah, still not working. Whatever. I guess you guys won't get the wrap, unfortunately. Or get the wrap version, too. Here we got this Lucina print. This was, I think, the year after. And this one's hella cool. This is kind of like almost in a League of Legends style. And holy crap, it is so good. It is actually ridiculously good. Like, holy crap. Yeah, there we go. That's a beaut. That's a beaut right there. That is a beaut. This one is like kind of like not in that like realistic anime style, because that's kind of been popular over the years now. Is that whole like pseudo realistic anime thing where it's like slightly realistic, or like super 3D, like a bunch of 3D effects and like stuff like that. Not like that anymore, but this one's a little more kind of like stylistic. I gotta move my pop filter out of the way. Sorry for the squeak. But this one's super cool. I love this one a lot. This one's like, look at this. Got a really cool look to it. Wait a minute, does that say Lucina? I'm trying to think what the text says. It definitely says Lucina. It's Lucina like split up a bunch. Where's gotta say Lucina? It's like that's an A at the end. That's a split N. Like yeah, like here's an A, split N. There's an I. I don't know what else they were going for here, but it looks really goddamn cool. Also got that sweet 420 at the bottom. And then we've got this one. This is kind of like almost like a Marth cross Lucina thing, I guess. And this is also super cool. Also, why is my lighting super weird right now? And this print as well. This one's also really cool. I hate how it's so dark. Like, I'm so dark in the background because it's blocking my light. Like, wait a minute. Just having a goof. There we go. I really like this one a lot. It's simple. And also, it's got a rip at the top, unfortunately. This one's also pretty old. Also, couldn't tell. I also main Lucina in Smash Brothers, or Smash 4, where I use Marth / Lucina in Smash Brothers. I also had a Lucina mod for Project M at some point. I also, my main Cypher deck is a Lucina deck. When I play Fire Emblem Cypher, I use a Lucina deck. If you look here, well, it's underneath here, but my mouse pad is, oh god. My mouse pad is technically a Lucina one. This is actually a card mat that I used to play Cypher. This is a card mat. It's not official merch, by the way. But this is the card mat I use. But now it's just my mouse pad because I don't play Cypher in person much anymore. Just in case you were questioning my dedication to the cause. And then also the shirt that I got on right now. I don't have any other Lucina shirts though. But that adds up. That's a lot of Lucina stuff that I have around my room. And it's like, where did you get all this? I don't know. It just accumulated. It just appeared someday, and I don't understand why. I haven't bought anything Lucina related in like 2 years, maybe more, but it's just around. In fact, I'll probably show off my complete, like, or my Fire Emblem collection another video in another one of these videos. But I think we've hit the hour point. I was questioning if I could even do this, but it looks like my bonds were strong. It looks like the future wasn't written, and we'll write it ourselves. Hope will never die. And I think this stream is now, not stream, but I think this video is now proof. That was 1 whole hour of talking about Lucina. Of repping the squad. All you Lucina fans, if I don't see y'all in the comments repping your colors, then I don't know what will. I don't know what will. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. I know this is the quality content you've subscribed for. If you want to just put this on in the background, or if you were listening to the background, if you were watching the whole time and you got through this, drop a like, drop a subscribe. I'm totally down. Anyways, how long have we got in this Conquest here? Well, Conquest is about to begin wrapping up. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Love y'all. Hope you stick around on this channel for more quality content. And I'll see y'all in the next one.